Hi, welcome to Hey Not the Face podcast, blog, Substack. This is the podcast portion, obviously. I have a special guest today, Jon Fitch, former UFC fighter, named plaintiff in the UFC class action cases that was settled. Well, the case, I should say, was settled. They were merged into one. And it was suggested to me and Stephanie, that we have him on. A listener, Jonas Whalen, suggested he had an idea to have Jon Fitch on to talk about the suits and everything that's going on in MMA. So we thought that sounds great because we need content and ran out of ideas. So we invited Jon on to talk. So welcome, Mr. Fitch. How's it going?
Well, it's good to be here. Glad to be talking about how ugly the fight world is right now.
Yeah, it hasn't changed much since my favorite movies of the 50s, 60s, and 70s about the fight business. Always
Yeah.
effed up. I guess we go to 80, Raging Bull too. So it hasn't gotten better since then. So first
Mhm.
off, what have you been up to lately? Ever since you retired?
Uh, Yeah, I moved to Indiana this
Oh,
last year, last May.
hmm.
Had a baby girl. Uh,
Congratulations.
I've been remodeling my house and kind of remodeling my garage to make it a gym. I kind of finished that. I'm started teaching out of that this last few weeks. And I'll be getting back on the seminar gig pretty soon. But other than that, I spent the winter wrestling season helping out with the Garrett wrestling team here.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's good. So now, do
They're-
you stay mostly involved in wrestling, or do you get involved in other portions of combat sports, jiu-jitsu, MMA still, or?
I'm still teaching a lot of stuff, but like it was really nice to reroot myself with wrestling. It really is the best sport. It's like the last real awesome sport we have.
The last?
The
Yeah,
last.
yeah, good,
I
yeah,
think, there's a lot of things that are great about all sports,
yeah.
but like where we are today, like all
Mhm.
the professional sports seem very fake. I want to keep it clean, but fake. Everything's just about gambling. They keep telling the story. They all keep saying the same thing. It really pisses me off. People love the stories. People love the stories. That's why they tune into the competitions. And I'm like, no, you're idiots. You're telling stories for the sake of stories. People love competition. The competition is the story. They don't understand that. They're just like, no, we're just going to tell a story like a reality show or a
Well,
movie,
I
and
think
we're
that's
going to
true.
create the champion. We're going to create this. We're going to make this. They don't let anything just happen.
Yeah, I partially agree, but I think the history, I don't think it holds up anymore because so many people now tune in just to gamble. That's all they care about. But I think the history of sports is that it's the competition's important, but the story was always to give you a personal emotional attachment to an athlete in that story.
Mhm.
And it made it, that you had a rooting interest then. When you learned about boxing, it was a master of this with their HBO, their documentary series and stuff. You learned about and go, now I want to see this guy win. He is
Yeah,
fighting his way up the
but
ranks, up to the
they've
title.
twisted it. They've twisted it, and they're not telling a story about the great achieving athlete. They're creating the great achievements for the athlete by faking everything. Oh, this guy's got a great story. They give him the easy fights. They make the easy matchups. They help who they want to win more, and you end up getting this story instead. Or they're just telling stories to create a narrative to sell the gambling.
Yeah. Well, I think a big part of this too is the influencer part because the story is the influencers going into boxing.
There's
The story is
no
not the influencer's
Yes,
rise. He didn't become
that's
an
kind of what I'm
influencer
getting
because
at.
he's
It's not actually about the competition of
yeah,
who's better. It's
yeah,
it's more like there's more weight behind. It's like, why does anybody watch Jake Paul fight? Like, he's not good. It's like you don't watch him because you want to see good boxing.
yeah,
You're watching the story. That's that's pro wrestling stuff. And I have a very large distaste for
yeah.
that stuff being around in sport.
I'm listening. I'm with you on a lot of that because I'm not a big fan of the. I mean, I understand the appeal to a lot of people. These
Yeah.
freak show fights, but that's not my cup of tea. That's not why I watch the combat sport. So, well, let's get going, I guess, through the questions that I think people want to hear. One is, I guess, we had a settlement. Took you 10 years, but we got it.
14, wasn't it?
What's that?
I think it was 14, wasn't it, to get
No, no,
the
2000. Well, no, filed 2014, settled last year, 2025. I guess, yeah, so 11 years. So it finally got paid out, but it covered since 2010.
Mhm.
So finally got paid out. Yeah, I was there when you guys filed, so I remember.
Mhm.
Finally settled. What's your feelings now that it's finally officially done? The people got their money. You got your money. The case is officially your settlement. Your case, Levy Zuffa, which you were one of the named plaintiffs on, is officially done.
Mhm. It's nice that a lot of guys got money that will help them,
Hmm.
and I'm happy about that. But it's upsetting. It's bittersweet because it doesn't seem like anybody cares. Like the guys, the fighters themselves, they're the ones that should. Who cares the fans or whatever?
Yeah.
They're gonna watch competition regardless, right? Whether you get paid or not. So the fighters who it really affects them not being like, oh wow, like we actually have a say in this, like we can actually do something about this. If we take action, like we can get something out of this. Because you're talking about a handful of fighters who stepped forward to do this and take part in this, and they got a pretty large chunk of money for everybody. What if, you know, what if more guys showed up to do something? What would happen then? Like everybody who complains about the settlement amount, like I'm going to give you a big bird because what did you do? What did you do? Where were you? You could have come forward. You could have spoken out. You could have joined with us. Like, go through your social media records. How many posts did you make about our lawsuit? How much support did you give to it? Like, the more support things have, the easier they go, the faster they move down the road.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess that would go on my next part. So from your react bittersweet. So the reaction from the other fighters, did anyone thank you guys? Did you get? I know a handful of fighters I've
I
seen
got a, I
thank you
got
post.
probably less than five. I think less than five guys.
Less than five fighters that
Um,
you know.
Um, I went out and did a seminar, and he was basically like thanking me for the money he got.
Yeah.
You know, like yeah, some
Okay.
guys really did say that. Um, like I have a lot of respect for Ben Rothwell. He actually came up and he said,
Mm.
DM me and like he say apologized that he was late to the party and he didn't say anything. He was with the UFC and like at least people like recognize that, man, I could have done something. Because I have moments earlier in my career where maybe I could have done more too.
Mm.
But I don't know, there's a lot of guys who just are very quiet and they took the money
Yeah.
and they're still
Yeah.
quiet.
Yeah. So no, how about the reaction to the when the settlement was first announced the first time, like 2 years ago, when it was for
Mhm.
40 million less, it was for Lee and Johnson. What was first? What was your reaction? And then did you get a reaction from any other fighters at that time?
Oh, like I wasn't happy at all with
Yeah.
like I wanted way more
Yeah.
with all the work and everything we put into it. There was points in the negotiations or whatever. I just put my head down because I was like, this is awful. I was like, I don't want this to be what we worked for.
Yeah.
But when you start looking at the position you're in, it's not even like right or wrong. It's like they were able to delay things long enough. They stalled. It's like you're
Yeah.
watching a fight, and one guy's just hugging and holding and not letting the other guy do anything,
Mm.
and that's how he's gonna come up ahead. I don't know.
No,
It
I
was
under
frustrating.
yeah, I could believe that. And also I think do people understand the how much impact those arbitration clauses, class action waivers had on that settlement at the time?
I don't think they do. I don't think most people even know they exist
Mm.
or that they're kind of messed up. Um, but yeah, they play a big factor in it. The fact that the guys weren't allowed to join any class action settlements or do any class action lawsuits. It's like they're making you sign away the ability to sue them for doing wrong. It's like, hey, we're gonna wrong you. We're gonna steal from you. We're gonna treat you terribly, but you can't do anything about it. Like we're gonna behave in an illegal fashion, but you're not allowed to complain.
Yeah, that seems like an admission of guilt right there. That
It
yeah.
would to me.
Yeah, you're like, listen, if we do some wage theft, you can't sue us. Well, it seems to suggest you might be doing some wage theft in the future.
Yep.
You know, so yeah. Now, how about when did you get any reaction from fighters when earlier in the case when information started coming out? Because I know when well, first I guess when it was first filed, how much did you guys get a lot of shit from people when you first filed the case? Because I remember there being a lot of people criticizing it, not
There's people criticizing it,
or
mostly
not
people
believing
criticizing
it at
it.
all.
People that criticizing it seem to be like a lot of the managers. It was mostly just like people were very, passive of like dismissive. I think that's the word for it. They were just very dismissive of it, I think, at first. It's like, yeah, whatever. You guys are just money grab. This is bull crap. You guys aren't sticking it out. Like, you're not going to do anything. UFC did nothing wrong. And then more and more stuff comes out, and I think more and more people start understanding it, but people still are afraid to talk. Like, I hardly had anybody reach out to me. I had a handful of people reach out to me over the years asking questions, what's going on? Why is this happening? It just seems like, I don't know, people are happy to live in like in a closet of no information and then complain, and it's baffling to me. It really is. It's like you can literally like, it's very easy to reach people like me and the other defendant or the other plaintiffs and the lawyers. Like you can reach out and text or shoot a DM. Like not that many people seemed interested at all. Even though when something bad happens, they all want to go and jump online and complain about it. I get that a lot now with it seems like the boxing community. I was getting kind of excited, like the boxing community was going to get riled up and start taking action, but they just do the same thing, is complain online. And when it's time to show up to actually do something, no one shows up.
How much is that part of the nature of combat sports, I guess, because it's you look at I remember Kong Lee said this years ago. He brought this up or kind of alluded to this that one of the problems is that when you're in combat sports, it's kind of like you're in a bubble. All you do is train, think about fighting at first.
Mhm.
Maybe later you start realizing, okay, I have value. I need to like worry about my finances. But first, it's all
Yeah.
about training, getting better. And also on top of that, there's just this added element of weight cutting. You're starving yourself. So all you think about all day is what can I eat? What am I allowed to eat? Because I'm not eating all day. I'm cutting weight. I'm eating shit I don't want. I have a craving, and it's almost like you're in those starvation studies from World War II. You're just that's all you. So your mind, the idea that you can actually spend mental energy on other stuff gets narrowed, and promoters kind of take advantage of that. They know
I,
that you.
I think it's also part of the culture, I think, to shut people up when they complain about it, right? It's like you start complaining about something that's obviously wrong. Everybody's like, well, that's just what it is. That's just the fight game. That's just the hurt business. That's the way it goes. Like coaches, trainers, managers, everybody's always just like, I always remember thinking that. I was like they're telling you, oh, there's no money in fighting. There's no money in fighting. And I was like, bullshit. I was like, if you're good and you win, you're gonna make money. It's like that to me, that's money in fighting.
Well, that goes. How much is also kind of the cultural thing with fighting? Because I mean, the idea of fighting is you beat a guy, you win, and then you earn money because you won. And so it just seems natural. The better you do, the more you'll get money. It'll just come to you. How much is
Yeah.
this like that idea that if I just win, it'll come to me instead of thinking, there's more to it than just me winning because there's like economic forces I can't see that dictate what my options are.
What? I mean, it is. It's hard to deal with when you're in it because you're trying to fight for, better contracts. You're trying to negotiate for better things. And like, if you do make noise and you lose a fight, like they're gonna shelf you. They're gonna talk smack about you. They're gonna pay, some bots from the Philippines to make posts about you and say that you're terrible, and then try to sway online support. So yeah, I mean, you're up against a large machine. So I mean, I do understand it, but like you, the machine is not as powerful as a group of fighters.
Yeah. But okay. Now, one other thing about when this was released, did you notice any reaction when the lawsuit got the information about the wage share that fighters got when that finally came out? I think around 2019. Did you notice any reaction from fighters at that time from anybody?
Man, some people would comment and complain about that, but I don't know, man. I just feel like a lot of people have it in the back of their head, like, some people just believe that the UFC is given under the table money that nobody knows about. So they'll argue that, oh, I bet they're actually making more money than what they are making. Um, and I don't know, just the
Well, isn't the trick that the UFC really does that? I mean, even with you, they gave you non-disclosed locker room bonuses, but it
yeah,
wasn't like massive amounts of money. It was, and
no,
and
it's
and it's
not.
when people think of that, they think every fighter is getting, large sums of money, and it's like, no, it's, a few thousand here, a few thousand, and every once in a while, it's a Daniel Cormier getting $1 million, but on a fight that generates 30 or
Well, I
$40 million.
mean,
So,
it's also there's an aspect to it where, your average person, if they're making 60,000 a year and you get a $30,000 bonus, they can't believe like how much money you just made. But you fight once a year, like it's not the same.
well, I think they miss too is the amount of effort that goes in before that. Like, well, this would be kind of helpful. Let's go back. When did you start wrestling? When did you start wrestling?
I started wrestling in the ninth grade. Or no, I'm sorry, I was 9 years old. I was in the fourth grade.
Yeah, fourth grade. You started wrestling, and then you wrestled all through high school. You took that
All through
serious,
all
right?
through high school, I was
Then
at Purdue for 6 years at
6 years
Purdue.
Purdue. So you had an extensive. In addition, you were trying out for like various teams, national teams, everything on the side. You were doing, training. I don't know how many hours a week would you say in wrestling at that time for the.
I mean, well, like I was a seasonal sport athlete, so I did play other sports.
Yeah.
But man, like I had the wrestling season, then you have freestyle, which is like the next couple months afterwards. And if you're good enough to wrestle in the summertime to make the, Team Indiana or something like that, so you got a lot of extra mat
So,
time.
so you put in 15 years of amateur wrestling, and
Mhm.
then you decided to get into MMA, right?
Yep.
And then, so what was your starting MMA career like? What was your training and what did you do there?
Well, I was still at Purdue,
Yeah.
the grad assistant for my first year I was fighting. So
Uh,
I was mostly just wrestling with the wrestling team, and then I would go to the co-rec and hit a heavy bag. And that was primarily my training
yeah.
at that time period. I did link up with Brian Ebersol in my first fight, and then we would go to I would go to East Illinois, who's at that university, and he'd come to Purdue sometimes.
Mhm.
So I'd get some training with him. But for the most part, I just wrestled and then we'd drive somewhere and go fight.
Then at what point did you like head out to San Francisco, the Bay Area, to start working at AKA and start training jiu-jitsu and doing all the
Yeah.
other.
So that was 2000, 2003. After my year of grad school, graduated 2002,
Mhm.
2003. I moved after a year of grad school and a year of fighting into AKA. So then it was like 2.5 years from then until I got into the UFC.
All right. My cat sat on my mute button here, so I got muted for a second. Uh, okay, so what was your training like at AKA? You were doing grappling, jiu-jitsu training,
When I first
striking,
got out there, I'm doing like 6 hours a day at least.
six. Okay, and then you
Six
were
hours a
there,
day, 5 days a week, and then something light on Saturday.
and then so it was 4 to 5 years of training like that
Hmm.
before while you're till you got into the UFC and then rose to a contender.
Yep.
And then I can't remember how many fights you had at that point. You were around, I think, close to 20 fights or something by the time you got your title fight with
Well, no,
was
no, I
shit.
had eight. I had 8 fights. I was 8-0, and I got a fight with
No,
GSP.
8-0 in the UFC.
Yeah,
Yeah,
eight
no, I
zero.
meant yeah, I meant overall, your total career. You were
I can't even remember
yeah, you were
my
like I
total
can't
career was total career is 43 professional fights.
overall, but I meant by the time you fought GSP, let's just the time you fought
In
him.
the 20s,
Yeah,
probably.
that's what I thought. I thought you were around 20. Yeah, so you had 20. So I just brought this up because when people say like, "Oh, that's so much money," you got to fight with GSP, and oh, when people hear you got like maybe an extra 100,000 or something on the side,
Yeah.
or 200,000 at the time for fight GSP, it's like, well, you ignore that. I've been wrestling since I was a little kid for 10 to 15 years doing amateurs. Then I got into professional, and I put in 6 hours a day training
Hmm.
uh, multiple skills and had put in 20 professional fights and rose through the ranks fighting the best in the world and had some athletic ability to do this. And so it's not like it's instantaneous success. You're being paid for two things. One is the amount of work you put in before to get to that place. And
Yep.
two is you're being paid because you are literally one of the best fighters in the world on a
Mhm.
stage where they are generating tens of millions of dollars.
And they're using your photo and
Yep.
name on posters in Times Square to sell
Yeah,
fight.
so I think it's like, Nate Corey once said that when people said, "Oh, I'd fight for that." Yes, you would, because you suck. You did not put in the
100%.
effort that we did. You did
You're
not.
not good at anything. You
Yeah,
suck. No
so
one will pay you to do anything.
but that always gets me when people kind of ignore of the background of how someone got to a spot, and just assume that, whatever they're getting paid
Yeah,
there,
I don't know.
free labor.
I think people feel shame sometimes when it's like someone else works really hard and achieves something. They want to just dismiss it as luck. And well, he just got lucky, and then they don't account for all the hard work you went through to put yourself in a position to make the money.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk. I thought about trying to fight at age 34, 35. I thought, because I'm older, and that's when went into training. A month later, threw out my back. I quit. There's no fucking way I'm ever gonna do a professional or even an amateur fight. The training was that just blew my back out training. So yes, I fully understand. You have to survive. Just to survive the training is intense.
Yes.
So, but now, so that okay, so that's always been a pet peeve of mine, how people just don't fully understand the amount of effort that goes into it, and the amount of work that goes. And then I think they also underestimate the amount of control, especially the UFC has over fighters' careers. And you were involved, even before this lawsuit, you were involved in one, if not the biggest labor incident in UFC history.
Yeah.
And that's when, if people aren't aware, in 2008, the UFC implemented an image rights deal where they put an addendum to everybody's contract that you have to sign over your image rights for video games and other products,
Yeah.
to the UFC. They submit it to you. You refused to sign it. You wanted like an attorney. You didn't think it was fair. And so they said
Well,
they're going to
it was forever. It was no money
yeah,
forever.
it was
And
in
I was like,
perpetuity.
wait a minute. I was like, how about you guys cut it off at like 20 years or something? Like, I don't know what video game technology is going to be. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, maybe someday I want to be an old man and do my own video game. Like,
Oh, I mean, just even that. I mean,
no,
who knows?
fired.
Yeah, who knows? In a few years, maybe the image rights are worth a lot. These video game rights. Maybe it'd be
Yeah.
worth. Maybe it's worth more than handing over for
I have
nothing.
no idea. Or maybe I just don't want somebody making a decision on what to do with my face.
But but they decided, because you wouldn't sign, that they announced that they were going to cut the entire AKA roster from the
Yep.
UFC. Uh, I think they were going to let Koscheck fight out his contract, but that was it. Partly because he was a big star and they wanted to cash in, I think, on him. But they cut Cain Velasquez at the time,
Yeah.
Christian Wellish, a bunch of other fighters that were from AKA in the UFC, until you had to concede that you would sign it to let everybody back in. So,
Yeah.
what's your, I guess, what's your memories of that incident?
No, it's just, yeah, it was a deliberate, like, performative thing because if they had a problem with me saying no, they could have just talked to me, addressed it, dealt with this, but they didn't. What they did was they didn't tell me, they cut me, didn't tell my management, they told the press. So the press was ready to go with stories first thing in the morning. So they started blasting out Jon Fitch is released from the UFC for not signing his contract, right? The whole purpose of them doing that was to scare all the other fighters into signing their contracts. Because I went undefeated in the UFC, rising star. I had fight of the night challenge title against GSP. I was one of the top most buzzed like guys at the time. They fired me, cut me because I didn't sign the contract. So everybody else was scared. I had guys literally come up to me and said that they were scared now because of that. Like I don't think it had anything to do with
Hmm.
them dealing with me. I think they were dealing with everybody.
Do you also think it's possible that it was also an attack on Zinkin and Bob Cook's connection? Because
Yeah, yeah,
they
that's
were
definitely.
because they were
They
the
didn't
one
like.
one of the few managers that were willing to take fighters out of the UFC and kind of compete promoters against each other.
Yeah, they actually did their job. For the most part, they did their job. They had a adversarial position to the UFC. They're always trying to find the best thing for each individual fighter.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
those,
they didn't sacrifice me to get Koscheck ahead or sacrifice Koscheck to get Swick ahead. Like they took each guy as a standalone guy and negotiated the best they possibly could for him, and they hated that.
yeah. Because I
They
don't know if
absolutely hated that.
fans are aware, but managers like Cook and Monty Cox and Jeff Clark and Sam Spire, all these guys that had adversarial relationships with the UFC, they're out of the business. The UFC
Yeah.
seems to, amazingly, they're out, and all the promoters in now are very friendly with
Very
the
friendly.
UFC and the matchmakers.
Promoters that wrote the UFC letters when the class action lawsuit dropped, saying they would do everything they could to help the UFC out.
Yes,
Not
exactly.
not help their fighters
Yeah.
the best way possible, but to help the UFC.
You know, the relationship to the UFC seems to be pretty important to those managers compared to you think your fiduciary responsibility would be to try to help your fighters get as much out of the suit as possible. Now,
Hmm.
at the time, do you re, do you one, I guess, do you regret coming back to the UFC right away? I don't know if you had any really options. And why
Yeah,
don't you
that,
think
that
that,
that's
sorry,
one of the things
yeah,
I honestly do kind of regret was Um, I could have stepped away and fought in Strikeforce. Like I had a good relationship with Scott Coker. I could have gone there. Jake Shields, Nate Diaz or Nick Diaz. There was guys to fight over there, and I could have been a champion there. And then they buy Strikeforce, and now I'm in a position again to fight in the UFC, fight for a title. Who knows?
yeah,
That would have been okay. And that was why they started threatening my teammates because they thought I would just grovel and sign. But I was like, all right, fine. I held out. I was like, I'm ready to go. I'll go to Strikeforce. I think they caught wind of that, got super pissed off, and they started threatening the rest of the team.
yeah,
That was before Rockhold and Cormier. So they would have never been allowed to fight in the UFC. They would have been signed. That was the notion they were given is like AKA was done with them.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that's, but in some ways, I guess personally from your, I mean, if you would have went to Strikeforce and could have won the welterweight title, you would
Mhm.
have been in you could have probably negotiated a hell of a deal coming back. It's when they
Mhm.
got merged. Or who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe if a bunch of AK guys show up at Strikeforce, they don't get bought. The promotion does even better. Who knows?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
Now, are you disappointed too that well, I should say, is there a reason why you don't think that led to because there was a lot of talk at that time, not just that, the original sponsorship deal got rolled out too, where they started
Yep.
charging sponsors a tax to be in the UFC.
Yep.
Do you is there any reason why that was an impetus for fighters to try to do something? I know Rob Macy was at the time trying to recruit people and he was having a hard time.
Yeah, when that happened to me, he showed up at AKA and I wasn't thinking anything of it. Um, I didn't understand the business model, the flaws in the business model, right? Was non-competitive. I didn't understand that. When the promoter controls the title and exclusive contracts, it becomes non-competitive. You're always going to end up with a monopoly, right? It's not good business. It's just a rigged system. I didn't quite understand that. All I knew is they didn't care about meritocracy or sport, and that really bothered me. So like I can, understand why some of these fighters don't come forward because me at the time I was like, I don't want to go that big of a deal. I just want it to be a sport. And I was still thinking that, oh, if you just win a title and you do things the right way, then things will go that way. But if you play their game, things will get worse. Not realizing that there was no power. You
Do,
didn't have any power winning a title.
Well, do you think, I think fans and a lot of people just outside are perhaps not aware of how much control the UFC has over a fighter's career, where fighters
Yeah.
feel it because, your chance to make money, your chance to be recognized as the best in the world or one of the best and make money is all dependent on will the UFC give you a fight? Will they sign you and give you? And if you don't
Well, I
concede to them, if you don't agree to them, it's like you're cut off from that avenue.
after my video game dust up, like they stopped interviewing me after fights. They wouldn't give me any mic time. Like just that, even fighting, they had to keep using me because I won, and they wanted to sell themselves as a sport. So you have to sell the meritocracy. So I lodged myself in a place where they had to use me, but like they wouldn't even give me a voice because they didn't want me to build any type of fan base.
Well, if I recall, wouldn't your fight with Thiago at one point it was a number one contenders match and you won,
Yes,
and it
it
no
was.
longer was a number one contenders match.
You watch the DVD, and Goldie's like, "Congratulations to Jon Fitch for another title shot. Well deserved, well earned." And then in the press conference afterwards,
That's when they realized, hey, there's no such thing as a mandatory in MMA. We don't have to do that. So,
yeah, so there's
but again, that's why fighters
way to
have
go
to.
away.
It does kind of it does explain a lot of like the fear that fighters have because their careers are really dependent on the promoter, what the promoter does. Much more. I mean, that's why you have tons of boxing conflicts with the
Well,
promoters and
it does
lawsuits in boxing.
when you don't have options,
Yeah.
when you can't replace your service provider, when you're stuck. If you had a crappy cell phone and you're only allowed to use that company's cell phone for the rest of your life, like that's not cool. Like if your phone sucks, you get a new service provider.
So no, when did you decide to sign on to the class action lawsuit? What was the decision that got you on board for that?
Um, I think I had just gotten let go after the Maia fight, and Rob asked to meet again with some other lawyers to talk to me about the lawsuit and what they were trying to do. And then they started to explain it to me and gave me the Carlos Newton breakdown of why it was a non-competitive system. And once I kind of got that, it all kind of like waterfall. Oh, I totally could see it. I could see the numbers in the matrix at that time. That's why we have a joke with us in the lawsuit together. We say we see dead bodies, right? Because it's like once you start to see the flaw in the architecture of the sport, you can't unsee it. And every time something goes wrong and people are like, "Why did this happen? I don't understand this." Like you can't not see the dead bodies.
Yeah, I think you mean dead people. That's the sixth
Dead
sense.
people.
We
Yeah, I
see
see
dead
dead
people. Yeah.
people.
Uh, okay, so now when you were, what was it like, I guess, being a named plaintiff during that 10-year process?
Yeah, man, a little bit, you know, frustrating because it's very slow.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of, hauling heavy rocks uphill trying to get, all the lawyers even to see what we were seeing, right?
Yeah.
Them to see and understand why competition wasn't possible because of that structure.
I've noticed that because even people in antitrust I talk to, they get caught up in, I think the models used for other industries, they don't quite understand in sport. It's
Mhm.
different. That's why it's good to go back to the old boxing
Sport is
legislation.
different, and then on top of that, combat sport is different.
Yeah.
Because you're in a situation where it's a fight, and
Mhm.
because it's a fight, like you can't leverage or force people into fights. It's not like a football game. You can't force people into a football. If one person, because of human rights, says, I don't really want to fight this guy, even though you're going to pay me a lot of money, you can't make him do it.
Mhm.
You can strip his title away from him, right? But that's a talk about mandatories. That's
Yeah.
another talk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's what, yeah, people miss is that it's it, combat sports, it's mutual combat. And some states allow for mutual combat, but combat sports saying we're going to allow mutual combat anywhere. These people have agreed to fight.
Mhm.
But you need that agreement. That's what the bout agreement is about. We are agreeing to have these two guys fight, and a lot of fans seem to think that it should just be the promoter's decision of who,
Yeah.
what, when, where, how the fight
No.
happens, and the fighters have no say.
It's not the promoters say.
Mhm.
Like they just provide the stage for the guys to agree to fight on. So at the end of the day, it comes down to those two guys.
Yeah, and that's why also why I think we were talking about other people don't see it. I think that's why the legislative history of judicial history of boxing is important because it's easier to see understand when you read that, like how, you want to prove you're the best in the world. And if
Mhm.
someone has control over the pathway to being the best, it's like, well, that means they have influence over you. They can coerce you into
It's an
decisions.
obstacle that doesn't need to exist in
Yeah.
order for you to do that.
Yeah. So now what are your thoughts about the new lawsuits, the class actions that followed yours, the three, Johnson, Sirkinoff, and Davis?
Um, I mean, they're great. They're great. We have um the next one is a little bit limited because of the decisions on, or because of them having the waivers and stuff in place. So you have less guys in the class because of that. Um, if Mish, if his is successful, then those go away, right? Because he's basically suing, saying that that's illegal, uh, practice for them to make you sign away
Yeah, under Nevada
and
law.
sue
So
them for doing
just for the
wrong.
listeners, if you're not aware, there's the Johnson v. Zuffa lawsuit is identical basically to the one Jon Fitch was in, the Levy Zuffa. The UFC's suppressing wages by engaging in antitrust violations. But a lot of the fighters signed class action waivers, so they can't be in that class. And so Misha Cirkunov is challenging it in court. And if he wins, those fighters, all the fighters that's on a waiver, would be part of the Johnson suit. So they would all. So there's potentially a huge amount of money on the line for these fighters.
Yeah.
Are fighters aware of that? Are a lot of fighters aware that there's the potential between getting nothing and a lot of money
I,
is
I,
on the
I,
line?
I don't honestly like probably not. Most of them probably don't know because they're not listening to you, and everybody else in the industry seems to just be a sycophant who just is got Dana balls deep in their pie holes, and it's like he can't do any wrong. Like no matter how times he lies or makes something up or doubles back on whatever he's doing or saying, like they just okay, yeah, yeah, it sounds great. So if you're the press doesn't actually do their job.
Mhm.
If it's all just Instagram people and influencers hyping each other up and getting clout, and like these fighters are in a bad spot. Like they actually gonna have to like actively seek out people who know anything about this stuff. And some of these guys don't even know there's lawsuits going on. Their managers aren't telling them. Ali Abdazez isn't telling his fighters about what's going on.
You don't think so? You don't think he's keeping them incredibly informed on the pulse? Well, you will hear. It's funny. You'll hear from fighters when they don't like the size of their check or wondering where their check is, I'm sure.
Yes.
But you
They
won't
want to hear
hear.
about the why,
Yeah, yeah, and
what
it's
to do to fix it. They just
yeah,
want to complain.
yeah. I also noticed too. I don't think you guys you named plaintiffs or anybody did many interviews with the media. I don't know how many requests there
Contact
were.
them all the time.
Yeah.
Hey, every time they would make anytime anybody would make a post or say something about the lawsuit, I'd be like, hey, we're not hard to find. We're right here. You guys
Mm,
want to talk about it? Silence, nothing.
yeah. And well,
Listening to like Brendan Schwab and Brian Callen like painfully struggle through some kind of understanding of what's going on. And I'm like, hey guys, I'm right here. I can make
mm,
some time, 10 minutes, fill you in.
yeah.
Nothing.
Nothing. Well, I will say there's been a handful of fighters, I think, publicly that have now talked about it and said, complimented you guys too. I know Matt Brown did several times in his podcast. Demetrius Johnson did. Maybe Brendan Schaub did. And I think that might be it that I've seen publicly. I know Gray Maynard has said stuff on Twitter, but he doesn't have a podcast or anything like that. So it's a handful of fighters, have come out and at least publicly said something. The rest hadn't. But on the new suits, I've noticed too, if their fighters aren't aware that one is the arbitration agreement's a big deal. Also, the potential that Phil Davis might not have standing. There's a lot riding on just like your suit. There's a lot riding on a very small group of fighters that have stepped forward.
Yeah.
That could be the
And
difference between fighters getting hundreds of millions or nothing.
the Davis lawsuit is huge because it's not seeking damages. So the judge has the ability to make changes.
Yeah, exactly. And people that complain about that you guys didn't do any injunctive relief, this is the injunctive relief part right here in many ways that you guys they were looking for. I mean, that's why you settled when you did, so you could preserve a second case.
Yeah.
And this one has injunctive relief, but I haven't heard. Now, maybe I could be wrong. I'm not in the loop, but just as you know, I know the based on the hearings, the plaintiff's attorneys we're describing communications between Dana White and other figures that have been lost. I haven't heard about any fighters like digging up their phones and say I have communications that can prove that they actually what they was deleted, or I haven't heard any fighters volunteering to maybe step in to replace Phil Davis if he loses standing.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. It seems like there could be a lot more being done. A lot of people could step up, and a little bit can make a big change. A lot of guys are just holding on, trying to wait. I don't know if they're waiting it out to see what happens or what.
Now, what do you think of the fighters' reactions to Zuffa boxing pay? Because that seems to have gotten a lot of attention the last whatever few
That's
months.
one of the things they got a lot of people talking, and that's like the big buzz right now. It's like the Conor Ben, who people have never even heard of, is he making $15 million, but they won't pay, big name UFC fighters that kind of money, who a lot of people know who they are. And it's just like that's one of the frustrating things. Is like, oh my God, so Dana's like lied? Whoa, oh my God, like where you guys been for the last 20 something years? I was like, when are you gonna quit getting outraged about the stuff that's obvious and always done? When are you gonna do something about it?
Yeah, so what are your thoughts on their new bill that House just passed it? It has to go to the Senate still before it goes to Trump's desk, but this American Boxing Revival Act.
It's sad because everybody's gonna get boned for a long time. Even if Zuffa fails, the TKO say they screw up, they go tits up. Um, Now they've changed the law, federal law, so somebody worse has the ability to come through and do an even more awful job. That's terrifying.
Yeah,
Like they're messing with things. I don't even think what's the word, hubris? I don't think they even
yeah,
understand.
yeah. Do you th-
Like
do you think boxing underestimates the risk here? Do you think they realize what they're dealing with or not?
I think a lot of people are taking cheap money right now because it's a little outside of our discussion, but I think we're near an economic bubble perp
Yeah,
pop.
yeah, we got. We don't have
I
to get
think
into that. I think we're in
I think the debt
the,
system, all this stuff.
yeah.
I think people at the
People
top, I think
start
the rich
people
people.
start canning food. That's all I'm saying. Start
Yeah, it's like
canning
when
your
the ship's
food.
sinking, like these
Yeah,
guys are like,
yeah.
I think they're trying to grab a big a bag as they can and store
But
it away
I mean, it's
so they can
understandable
build
from
their
the
underground bunker or
but
whatever.
it's understandable from the boxing point of view where you I can't complain like
Hmm.
current boxers if Zuffa boxing comes up or Riyadh season and Saudis come up and offer you a large amount of money, you're a prize fighter. This is your current career. The
Yeah.
short it makes sense that you might sign on with them for
Hmm.
huge like we just saw with Conor Ben and all these other fighters are going to be offering a ton of money and Jay Opatai and stuff more than they get elsewhere. So it makes sense for them to sign with Zuffa boxing without concern for the industry, but I'm somewhat surprised that other people in the industry, namely the boxing media, and even the promoters and sanctioning organizations, they they don't seem to fully understand what potentially could happen. Like, because they view Zuffa boxing as like, oh, just another person kind of come in, but they're
Hmm.
changing the law. And if you look at what's happened in the past or what happened in MMA, it's like eventually it's like, well, those big purses are going to disappear because you
Yeah.
won't have options.
Yeah.
It might not hurt the current boxers. Canelo's not going to
They'll get
suffer.
people locked in, they'll get the TV deals locked in, and then they'll no longer have to deliver on named fighters and named cards because they'll do a really good job of telling stories about guys. So they push the gambling, and then
Yeah.
it's just a bland,
Well,
number of
I think the
fake
risk
fights.
is if they own their own title and rank, if they'll spend a lot of money to go out and get the Canelos and the big name fighters now at the top. But if they get the top three, four, or five guys in every weight class or the divisions they want, if you're underneath them, the only way you can really be recognized as the best is you have to sign with them. And
Hmm.
they might offer that first wave of guys a decent deal, but then comes the next wave like, well, we don't need you because the public now thinks this is the best guy in the world, that he's under contract with us.
No, they'll do what they did with the MMA titles. They'll buy the other titles up in order to monopolize and make theirs the only one.
Yeah, I just think they'll make them obsolete, the sanctioning organizations. I mean, they're gonna the
Well, I mean,
sanction.
after a while, just like they
Yeah,
made WEC,
yeah,
Strike Force,
yeah.
Pride, all
I
those
think
all
the
become
contracts, the boxers will be more important. They'll go after key boxers. But I'm somewhat surprised. People underestimate the risk, and also, you were there trying to get lobby to get the Ali Act expanded to MMA. Is this extra painful because one, it
It
kind of
is. It's
robs that
very
whole.
painful because the amount of time and effort we spent paying out of pocket to fly to DC to talk to people. We had over 50 co-sponsors from both sides of the ticket. Like we were doing really well. And then all of a sudden they we get to a subcommittee hearing and it's supposed to go to a vote. It gets shelved. They put it at the bottom of the pile and then they they don't vote for us. So we got to reintroduce it. Mark Wayne won't reintroduce it.
Mhm.
It's
I mean, conspiracy theorists would say that at the conspiracy at the time that Trump made a phone call or someone from his administration, because there's members of the administration that used to work for the UFC, called, told the
mm.
committee chair to pocket it, and then
Oh, we know that's what
because
happened. That's
yeah,
what happened.
yeah, and then because Mark Wayne is trying
His
to be
guys
friendly to
carry it.
Trump, he doesn't introduce it again because Trump doesn't want to see it. Trump's people doesn't want to see it introduced.
Yes.
But
Also that you know they could come through and then gut the Ali Act and it's
but
gross. It's just
but
gross. Just like
yeah.
it's very disheartening because it's like, oh, so it just takes money. So all you gotta do is have a lot of money and then it doesn't matter how terrible you are or how much people don't want it or how much the fighters don't want it. Like, doesn't matter.
Yeah, it
That
is
sucks.
somewhat.
That sucks. That's
I mean, because your goal too is you wanted to expand it to MMA, and now if it gets expanded to MMA, it's like pointless because you just legalized the UFC model, which was
yes.
the whole point of wanting to expand it,
Yeah, there's no
is to
reason
create
to
more
you
competition.
basically they're doing the reverse. They're expanding MMA to boxing.
Yeah, yeah. They're as I
They're doing
said,
the exact opposite of what we were trying to do.
they introduced a bill, the Ali Act, that does the worst of both. It's like, well, we think boxing's corrupt and dysfunctional, but we're going to keep that in place, but then introduce the system in MMA that lets you monopolize fighters and pay them very little.
Well, and
And
that's all these guys. The biggest sin in big business is competition, right? That's what they all believe. Like that's their goal is to monopolize. They want to monopolize. Monopoly, 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 everything.
mm,
Get rid of your competition. But like once you get rid of your competition, things start really sucking. Like that's a big reason why movies suck today
yeah,
because production companies don't have to compete with each other to get on into theaters, right? The production companies are owned by the app service, streaming service itself. So they're making their own content. So they're not competing with anybody. So they just create a bunch of turds.
it's the what's the process and shitification as they call in tech. You get everybody on the platform, they're stuck on the platform, and now like you can start extracting value by making things worse.
Yeah.
So I guess as we wrap this up, a question is, what would you like to see happen if in a dream scenario for you, what would you like to see happen in MMA? What would the landscape look like?
So that's I would like the Ali Act as is expanded to MMA. I would love some form of more mandatories placed on it, right? You gotta stick to these mandatories. These guys fight these guys. And if they don't, they're stripped or fined, something to incentivize the fighters to take the fights because you can't force them,
Well,
right? And I'm fine with multiple titles,
mhm.
right? As long as there's uh cross promotion involved with those mandatories, right? So we don't have people holding out because they're signed with somebody, whatever. I'm fine with multiple titles because you actually need multiple titles to define like which ones are the best because there's always needs to be a separation, right? There needs to be a separation of power. And I think if you have multiple titles, you have different organization taking care of each title, each sanctioning body taking care of it. They've got to uphold their position or nobody's going to want to fight for their title. And if nobody wants to fight for the title, it becomes worthless. And then another title will have the ability to compete and raise themselves up. Maybe some other title becomes more prominent.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah,
that's a healthy ecosystem.
that's
It's
a
not a team sport, so
yeah.
you can't have like an actual league. Like I
Mm.
mean, I still get irritated when people say league about fighting. There's no leagues, there's just promotions. No matter how many times you want to make the word fit, it doesn't. Um, you know, it's you're not going to have one title in an individual sport. It's impossible.
Well, I think the what I would like to see is along most of those lines. One is we had a lot of suggestions that way amongst after the LA Act was passed because I think you strengthen the ratings guidelines, the guidelines for the sanction organizations to, they must keep mandatories, must use like box offs or eliminators to get a mandatory, so it's just not awarded to someone. But the multiple title thing is, to me, it's the problem with one title is it can create a logjam. If that fighter is only going
Hmm.
to defend, let's say, once a year, because it's somewhat unrealistic to make them, maybe 9 months a year, whatever. But you can't make guys defend three, four times a year. Their bodies can't hold up. Well, that creates a logjam. There's a lot of people waiting for their opportunity.
Yep.
And so if you have, my hope in boxing, I mean, the same as if you had multiple titles, enforce what they suggested was a rating system that basically have to use the same rating system. So if a guy has a title, he can actually try to be a mandatory on another one. And that way he could make it very easy to become undisputed or, a unified champion or undisputed.
Fans love watching title fights. Promoters like promoting title fights. It's a good thing. Like that argument, like you don't understand the argument. You shouldn't be in this argument if you don't understand the value of multiple titles in an individual sport. Imagine if golfers only played one tournament a year.
Yeah.
Like that's an individual sport. You play multiple tournaments
Yeah.
because you need that variation
Hmm.
to find out who's really the best.
No, on top of that, so that's kind of your dream scenario, more competition, the individual titles, the multiple titles if necessary. I think MMA missed its opportunity when we had like a ring title, the title for the Japanese belts, and the
Yes.
American cage. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, there's two different titles and they're very unique.
I would love that. I
Yeah.
think that's
But
we would have multiple different, they were pushing that. They did a little MMA thing. Frank Shamrock had his little pit thing. It's kind of like the karate combat pit. They were doing MMA fights in that. Like I would love to see that.
yeah,
Like why not?
but
It's just more opportunities for promoters to make money, more opportunities for fighters to get work. Like I'm all for it.
do you think, based on your experience with this, do you think there's any chance that fighters, not all fighters, it's stupid to say like all the fighters have to come together. The idea that the entire UFC is going to sit out is ridiculous. But do you think there's a greater chance that a greater number of fighters, that more fighters are becoming aware that at least if not the entire roster, at least if maybe scores if or dozens at least of fighters can come out and say, you know what, I am going to support something that you can get a larger number of fighters, active fighters, higher rated fighters, you know,
I mean, I don't know. The most we can do is just keep talking and hope more people come uh, joining the conversation with the Fighters Association. We've got a lot of guys on a group chats discussing things, talking about things going on. Um, that's the big thing is like hopefully there's a miracle and this stuff, the Revival Act does not get passed through Senate. I'm hoping that something miraculous happens and enough people are like, no, this is bull crap. We're not doing that.
we need
Say
Bernie
that.
Sanders to step up right now.
Well, you have like the Black Caucus. I don't think the Black Caucus would support this at all.
Yeah.
You know, like they were big supporters of the Ali Act, and they did a
Yeah.
lot of work to get it through. So I don't, if they have
Yeah.
some
Well,
pull in
on
other
the House
people.
side, it was a lot of Black Caucus congressional members that supported on the House side.
Oh
But
no.
I think, but I think the big part of it was that I don't think most people in Congress, the House, have any idea what the bill was.
Yeah, they don't know what it is. They don't really know.
You're dealing with on one side you have a $40 billion company, deep pockets with lobbyists, and the other side a bunch of people that like just show, hey, please don't vote for this. It's going to kill me. It's a kind of an imbalanced
Yeah.
a fight right there. So
So it's just it's ugly because they do pass it. Now we're stuck. That's the fight is now we got to change it back and expand it.
mhm.
That's
Yeah,
just
you got the and then you still got the
it's
antitrust
going to be a
suits.
big fight because all
Yeah,
the other you got I know they're going to go in there and they're like, "Hey, we just changed this. Why are we changing it back?" Like
yeah.
it's gonna be hard.
Mhm.
But that's probably one of the top fights. Um, our biggest hope, honestly, right now is those three lawsuits. We need Misha's to go through so that all those guys can be put back on the lawsuit, be part of that class. We can get ready to introduce another class
Yeah, yeah,
then,
yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
otherwise you can't. Because now if they uphold the UFC's contracts, then we can't do another class action. It's
yeah.
done. It's done in the water. Because that's the idea is you keep doing them. Like they
Mhm.
can't just keep settling.
Yep.
Just keep doing them until we get the changes we want.
Yeah, you keep doing them either until the courts order some sort of injunctive relief that they can't engage in those practices, or the defendant just says, "Listen, we're done. We're tired of having to deal with this. Let's
Tell us
negotiate
what we
some
have
sort
to
of
do.
final
Yeah.
settlement." So, that was been the history of sport. All right, well, that's I
So
don't
so
really.
hopefully, in the Phil Davis suit, hopefully if all three of those go through and are doing kicking butt,
Yeah,
which all of our stuff kicked ass. We didn't
yeah,
lose anything. We didn't
yeah,
all the UFC had to do was win one argument and the case is done with no settlement. They
yeah,
could do that. We had
yeah,
to settle because they kicked the can down the road long enough.
yeah.
That was it. They stalled. Their only technique was stalling.
Mhm.
They didn't win any argument.
Well, I think the thing I don't think people understand is that when they took out injunctive relief from your case,
Hmm.
the threat to the UFC was purely financial, which is still terrifying because it was a large amount of money in trouble. What I don't think
Yeah,
the
but companies like this know they're doing wrong.
yeah,
They put the money aside.
yeah,
They already have the money waiting.
but I think the fans, what they don't really understand though is that the jury trial, the way it works is that you need an unanimous jury decision, right? So that's risky for you guys. It's risky for them. They could owe
All
billions of
all
dollars.
eight all eight people.
Yeah, it's risky for you because what happens if one Yahoo goes, you know what? They signed the contract. Fuck them. It's their own fault for signing the contract. They're one of those guys. So
Yep.
there's tremendous risk on both sides. So as soon as you lose that injunctive relief, the risk becomes less risky to the UFC. They're more, and so it becomes more risky for you guys.
Yeah.
And so that I think that's where the settlement had to come in. And I think that's what people miss is that if these future cases can go forward with injunctive relief still in place, or if injunctive release is ordered for Davis, it strengthens the case tremendously. Those guys might, you might be looking, jealously on them in the settlement they get if everything goes their way.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I
Yeah.
guess, yeah,
Because there was a lot more money being made in that time
yeah,
period.
yeah, and also because if there's more leverage, they can get a bigger settlement possibly.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
of course, it could go the opposite, but we'll wait and see. So, well, congratulations, you won your suit. So,
Yep.
I'll give you
That, that,
congratulations on
that
that,
was
sir.
nice. That part was nice.
Do you have anything you want to share? You have your Twitter account,
Yeah,
johnfitch.net.
I have not been online much at
Yeah.
all.
How's you
I
still
will be
doing?
back. I will be back. I plan on setting up my podcast
Yeah,
area
I was
in the
going to ask about
basement,
that.
but we had leaks and so we've been remodeling the basement. We
Yeah.
had to put in a sub pump and all that stuff, and it's dry. It's looking nice, and
Uh,
my dad's going to town. But it'll be by the summertime. I'll probably be something up and running with the online stuff. But I'm
okay.
here in Garrett, Indiana. I'm helping out with the wrestling team. They won
Yeah.
their second state title in a row, their team state.
Look at that. Jesus.
EA team 2A class. We had a guy place second at state, 175 pounds. He's interested in MMA, so you might hear about him. You might hear
Yeah.
about Carter
Okay.
Field someday in the future. And then I'm running some classes and stuff out of my garage, just
Mhm.
teaching here and there.
Okay.
And I'll be on the road doing seminars. So people want to reach out through some of my social media and ask about seminars. I like road trips and and travel. So
Oh, okay. Well, when you get your podcast up and running, maybe I can come on again. I was on once, so
yeah.
I don't have anything to say, but I'll be on it.
Well, you're the only one that actually reports on anything significant in this industry. Everything else is just Instagram clout chasing nonsense.
Well, that's my future business model is
Oh my God.
cloud chasing nonsense.
I'm
Very,
just gonna
yeah.
I'm gonna turn everything off and yell at the clouds.
That's very smart. Well, I appreciate you having on. For listeners, if you're not a subscriber, we give these interviews away for free, but normally we're a subscription-based service, so half the interview or half the shows are behind a paywall. So please subscribe for the other shows.
Pay
You
for the
can,
stuff you like, guys. Pay for
yeah,
the stuff
yeah.
you like, or it'll
This
go away.
man's going to give me a huge endorsement here to tell people to
Yeah.
subscribe.
Pay for what you like, guys, or it goes away.
Yep. It's the only thing keeps me afloat. I can be reached on Twitter at Hey Not The Face, on Blue Sky at Hey Not The Face, something or other, Blue Sky. Stephanie can be reached at Crooklyn MMA on Twitter. My email is heynottheface@gmail.com. And with that, thank you, Jon. Thank you, listeners, and we will see you on the next episode.
Not in the face! Thank you.